of the Municipal Light Board, permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. First is Mike Landers, who has advised us that he is unable to attend this meeting. Steve Horn?
Yes.
Thank you. David Lane?
Here.
Thank you. Peter Korpusik?
Here.
Thank you. Angelica Medina?
Here.
Thank you. Clint Allen?
Present.
Thank you. Jason Small?
Here.
Thank you. Stephanie Doherty?
Here.
Thank you. I will now read the introduction to remote reading. Good morning. This open meeting of the Municipal Light Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded. So that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Municipal Light Board is convening remotely via Microsoft Teams. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. As posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. I got to correct my script here so I can get it right in the future. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that our folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Actually, for our meetings, we have modified that and we simply ask for comments, and if there are none, we move on. Comments from the group. That saves time in the meeting. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly in any way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, we have established an email address for public comment. Public comments at danversma.gov is the address. This email address is also posted with the agenda and shown online with the streaming of this media. Residents will email comments and they will be provided, read out loud after staff has confirmed their name and address. Finally, each vote taken taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. That completes the reading of the remote meeting script. We will now move to the next item on the agenda, which is to receive public comments. Clint Allen, do we have any public comments that have been received prior to the start of the meeting?
Good morning, Bill. I'm not seeing any public comments at this point.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Do I hear a motion to close the public comments portion of the meeting?
Make a motion to close the public comments portion of the meeting, Bill.
Thank you,
Horn.
Steve. I will second that motion. We will now move to a roll call vote on the motion on the floor to close public comments. Steve?
Yes.
And I vote yes, with Mike Landers absent. That is unanimous passing of that motion. We now move to the next item on the agenda, accept the minutes from the February 23rd, 2021 meeting. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the meetings of February 23rd. This is Steve Horn.
Thank you, Steve. I, Bill Hayes, will second that motion. We will now open the floor to discussion on the motion to accept the minutes as submitted. Steve, you have any comments on the minutes?
I have no comments on the minutes, Bill.
Okay. Does anyone else on the management team have any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, we will move to a roll call vote on the minutes. Steve Horn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill Hayes, how do you vote? Yes, minutes are passed. The motion to accept the minutes is passed unanimously. We now move to item number 4 on the agenda, the December 2020 financials that are in draft form. Peter Korpusik, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, we're in between things here at this point in time. We're still wrapping up, as I've mentioned last month, the final version of the 2020 financials, and we haven't really got to a lot of the adjusting entries that we need to do in January. So I thought we might go over these again, and they have changed. What we're doing is we're accruing expenses for invoices that for projects and maintenance, regular maintenance that come in. So the expenses are up, but that's just a timing issue for how we get how we get our invoices, and because we're on a split A/B team in January when we were doing the payroll, we had to process a bunch of the payrolls and post them back. So some of the payroll numbers have gone up. So that's just traditionally what happens here at the end of the year, and I thought we might highlight that we are, as we go along, accruing payroll expenses and accounts payable expenses. The one thing I did want to mention is on the second page of expenses, uncollectible accounts, account number 904, approximately halfway through the page. We finally got to that point in time where we were accruing our expenses for bad debt and stuff, and we use a formula that we've used for the past 25 years. However, this year, as we've talked about many times in the last several months, the accounts receivable has been going up as we've gone through the year. It has remained fairly stable. We've been happy with how our customers have been paying, and that's all been great. But we did, this particular year, if you notice, it's approximately $10,500 more than it was last year. Given the fact that we're still under COVID and there's still potentially people that may not be able to pay all of their bills, or whatever problems may still arise with bills that were produced in 2020, we did raise the reserve, and that has the implication of increasing our expenses. So that's somewhat unique this year, and I wanted to point that out, and that way we're trying to foretell if and make arrangements so that we have the reserves to write off accounts receivable if, as we go down the line in this year, we find that that's going to happen. Additionally, Last month, there was a concern, Mr. Chairman, or inquiry about account number 253 on page 5. That's a balance sheet account, and that's a liability. And a liability is something that the electric division owes. So that's was due to an audit adjustment from our 2019 audit. And if we recall and think back, the division made a 4 million plus 4.1 million, I think it was, contribution to the retirement system. And that number that we used, if you recall, we've seen actuarial reports with funding schedules that were developed for the division to pay down the unfunded liability of the pension liability. In 2019, we made the decision to pay down the liability that have been incurred in prior years. So this entry here and other deferred credits was made because of that particular payment to the retirement system. So although it is a lot of money, in the scheme of things, we reduced the liability, and so that's good. And when that number gets incorporated into the new actuarial study, we'll see that the funding schedule for the division will be less, which we've seen before when we, as we may recall, if we think about the first $5 million payment, the next funding schedule that we got from the actuaries, I believe the division was going to pay off the unfunded liability 7 years prior to what the town was able to do. So that's good progress. That will allow us to devote other resources to maintaining the system and adding additional things to the infrastructure to make it a better, more effective and reliable system for the customers at Danvers. And other than that, we're still profitable. We're still liquid. Our big liabilities are being taken care of. The one that we still have is OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, which in simpler terms is really the health insurance for the retirees. That we have on the books as a liability too. So we are working on that. We make contributions to reduce that on an annual basis. But again, that's a large number of promises that have been made by the town and the division to former employees. And other than that, Mr. Chairman, that's really what I had. And like I say, next month we'll be back on our regular schedule and get right into 2021, which at this point in time on our preliminary work, we don't see any problems.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Steve, do you have any questions for Peter?
Yeah, Peter, Steve Horn here. Based on the uncollectible accounts, which I especially during the COVID, seems fairly reasonable. What are our collection policies and procedures? I guess if say a business goes out of business, closes, do we attach onto their property?
If Mr. Horn, yes. If the property is owned by the business, then we can lien and attach it and put it on their real estate tax bill. Not every business owns the property, and so we can't necessarily do that. We do charge deposits for those businesses and residents who do not own their property to help guarantee the receivables. Some businesses, they post a bond, and they buy insurance themselves. So the answer is, in a lot of cases, a lot of the residents, yes, they own the property. There is no deposit required. If they default, we can, in fact, put the outstanding amount on their third quarter tax bill, which is the January tax bill. Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes for businesses. Again, not every business owns their property. And then sometimes we have people that own the business and own the property, but the business is in one corporate name, and the property is in another corporate name, which in effect means the business doesn't own the property, even though the owner of the property is the same person. So, not to throw a curveball in there, but it's not.
No.
There are a lot of iterations with each unique customer. So they can't.
And just, Stephen, to follow, and Bill, to follow up on Peter's, for those rentals that are not the owners of the property, we have the deposits on their account, and then we also have to use our electric shutoffs, that process, in order to work to collect the unreceivables. So during the spring, summer, and fall, we're able to shut off customers once they receive a certain threshold of non-payment, and we have to do that every year.
And last question I have for you, Peter, would be, at what point, is it 90 days, 120 days, or does it depend on seasonal conditions as, as stated by law?
Yeah, first off, the regulations are promulgated by the Department of Public Utilities, which regulates us, and they're spelled out there. And in general, as a general statement, we can shut anybody off during any time of the year. However, when you get from April 15th to between November 15th and April 15th, the hoops or the steps that we need to take are, certainly more stringent, higher bars to meet. If a person, but it is regulated by season, and there are specific days. We can't even start to think about it until a bill is 45 days past when it was mailed. So that's a month and a half, and those are the rules. And in some cases over the years, we found that people who really don't have the money, sometimes they move into an apartment. We have a deposit and we base it based on what was used there before, maybe a small deposit, and then they use a lot of electricity. So they could be gone by the time we start implementing our promulgated regulations and rules for shutting people off. So it's, they don't want us to be overbearing. We do not want to be overbearing, but that is what we follow. They are strict in certain ways. We have to follow things.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. No more questions, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Peter, I have a few. First, I'd like to comment that your action to increase the allocation for uncollectible bills certainly makes sense, given the situation we're in with COVID. First question I have is in the revenue section, the unused customer discounts, account number 450, is up like 25%. And I know that's customer discounts that have been taken, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I'm surprised that with the revenue up about 3% for the year, customer discounts taken are up 25%. It just, it surprised me when I noticed it. Is that something you've looked at, or?
Mr. Chairman, when COVID first started, we made a decision not to charge back the discounts given the financial implications of the pandemic on everybody. As we went further through it, we have, as many of us know, we have many ways to for customers to pay. One of our most popular payment methods is a lockbox, where if you use our return envelopes. So that's a contractor, but the contractors aren't immune from COVID either. So there's been several instances over the last year where they've had to shut down and our payments have not been here on a timely basis. So we haven't been charging the discount back, and that's why that's up there. It's certainly a lot of money when you look at it, and I'm not going to say that, the 300,000 additional this year, excuse me, 300,000.
Yeah, 300,000.
But it does help those people that are struggling, to meet their bills. And like I say, we've had disruptions with people using the exact payment methods that we wanted them to use, and we continue to want them to use it, but we had to make alterations so that we weren't punishing them for issues that were happening because of the pandemic.
Okay, that makes sense. It just struck me because it was, like I say, it was a big change compared to the revenue and a fairly significant amount. Okay, thank you, Peter. Good explanation. Next question. Down on expenses, the second line item, taxes, account 408. Not a big number, but what taxes does the electric division pay? Just kind of a idle curiosity question.
We have to pay that to the town of North Reading, Bill, for the property that we own up there. And we still own a little bit of property in Middleton we have to pay taxes on.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then cash on hand. Peter, usually you give us the cash on hand total.
Yeah, that's, if we look at page 4, where we have our two, we have our operational cash account number 131, and our reserve accounts, account 128. There's approximately $18.7 million between those two accounts. And as I've mentioned in the past, the operational account is up. I mean, again, last year, the pandemic altered our workflow so that we could keep crews rotating and available for emergencies and stuff. So the amount of cash we spent from operations was less. If we take that 18.6 million and go over to the next page, which is page 5, and in the middle of the page there we have account 126 depreciation. That's approximately $3 million. So between our three large accounts, our stabilization account, our operating cash account, and depreciation, we have approximately $21.6 million at this point in time.
Okay, so still very healthy in spite of the pandemic. Okay. Bear with me just a sec. Okay, that takes care of my questions, Peter. Okay, thank you. Good report. Any questions for Peter from anybody on the management team? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to accept the financials as reported?
This is Steve Warner. I'd like to make a motion to accept the financials.
Thank you, Steve. This is Bill Hayes. I second the motion. Having already checked for discussion on the report, we will now move to a roll call vote. Steve Horn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill Hayes, how do you vote? Yes. Motion passes unanimously, and we will now move to the next item on the agenda, the PP and FA for April of 2021 with Clint Allen.
Good morning. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Clint.
So we have the numbers in through July, with exception of the open access transmission tariff bill, which is always a few months out. So far, through the year, we're sort of following the trends we saw in 2020. We'll start with, the first factor for the PPNFA, which is the power supply cost. You can see the first graph, January's in. We landed, roughly $200,000, $177,000 below what we had budgeted for. And we're keeping, it's the first month of the year. We're still, we'll touch a little bit more on the KWH sales factors, but we're still, especially now, seems like we're getting back to what our original kind of forecast models were predicting before 2020 was the big asterisk for everybody, but certainly we were not spared from that. So moving into KWH sales, we basically came in about 10% below what we had forecasted, which again, for this year, we went, we kind of disregarded 2020 statistical data as far as our forecast was concerned. We went back and looked at 2017, 18, 19, and then there's a weatherization factor that's applied. So we did come in light for where we were in January, but again, we're keeping an eye on that, and we're hoping as more businesses are getting back into full production, and we'll kind of normalize where we've been our traditional, but you'd be able to utilize our traditional forecasting model. So we go to the second page. We'll take a look at the third factor, which would be the power supply revenue, which, as always, it follows the KWH sales pretty closely. And again, so for January, revenue came in about 10% below what we had budgeted for, which was about 218,000 below what we had targeted. So ultimately, for, if we want to turn to the third page, please, we can go to the January to December 2021, the power supply cost and revenue summary graph. So we can see for January, we came in the year, or we began the year with about 2.5 million, just north of 2.5 million in the over-under collection fund. We've, set the PP&FA charge to return various amounts throughout the entire year. We returned a little bit more in January than we had anticipated, but not a bad thing. We're still well in line to kind of close out the year. Right now, it's tracking to 675. So we can, be safe to say, through January, if we'll keep an eye, like I said, with the reduction potentially in the forecast, but we're still very comfortable with how we've been performing so far for 2021. So the recommendation then would be for April to hold the residential and all other charges fixed for where they've been for the first 3 months of the year, which would be 5.28 cents per kWh for residential and 5.52 cents for all other rate classes. Another thing to note, I think it was upon Bill's recommendation from last month, within the actual recommendation paragraph, we went through and calculated upon, based on the methodology of the new PP and FA policy, the 2% number of the power supply budget would be 515,000. So that would really be the target that we are trying to hit at the end of the year. So, another thing I wanted to note, I had it in there last month. We didn't really get to talk about it, but if you wouldn't mind turning to page 4. So we just we took a look back to the past 5 years. You can see through this graph, there's a couple things happening here, but so the orange bars are the forecast. This is where, using the 3-year model with weatherization factored in. The blue is the actual from what we've seen. You can see some years like 2017, we had a very late summer peak. I think that was, I want to even say it's like the very end of August or beginning of September. But so you can see that was a big outlier. Otherwise, you can see, the actual KWH follows the forecast pretty closely. The other thing to note that I'd like to just, and we talk about this a lot, but if you look at the rolling average for KWH sales, so bulk sales is that red line, starts back kind of in the middle in January 2016. You can see it's on a it's on a decline and potentially it's leveling off now, but that's just always something to keep in mind. KWH sales have been declining for now past 5 years. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, do you have any questions for Clint?
Yeah, Clint, Steve Horn here. I noticed with the documents that you're giving us, we have, what's National Grid, what's Eversource, Raleigh, and what have you. And the residential bill rate is using 750 kilowatts. Why is it why are we using 750? Is that an industry standard? Is that, why that number?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. So we went back. 750 is the average bill that a Danvers resident would expect to see. So that'd be the average, just within our service territory.
Is that usually standard throughout, Massachusetts or in our footprint, if you will, of the Northeast?
Yeah, I could look into that a little bit. It's, I think it just varies based on, I would say that's probably pretty standard, industry-wise. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious on that. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I have no further questions. Thank you, Clint.
Thank you, Steve. This is Bill Hayes. Clint, just a quick question. On the very first section, power supply cost factors,
Mhm.
I know I ask this a lot because I'm always confused. Confusing me is not a high bar, as I'm sure you recognized. Under power supply costs in the text to the right there, you mentioned transmission costs landed at 106 below budget. Capacity pricing came in 24 over budget, but then energy costs came in 96K under projection. What's the difference between budget and projection? I know I ask this a lot, and I'm always
I
confused.
think in this, yeah, so over the last couple of years, Bill, working with you, I've tried to clean this up as much as possible. I hate to admit that I probably just got tired of using the word budget. I didn't want to use it 3 times in a row. So you can strike the projection and put budget in there if you like.
Okay.
All right.
All right. As I say, I'm
I'll
easily
keep that in mind for going forward.
Okay. I think that was the only question I had. I think that the graphs you provide are really quite informative. And I was looking at the website, and I'll bring it up in my comments, but one of the things I've mentioned periodically is the idea of a dashboard, and I'll go into detail, but these seem like very informative graphs that we ought to have on our website. So that's the end of my discussion and questions. Do I hear a motion to accept the PPFA, to approve the PPFA recommendation?
Bill, Steve Horn here. I'd like to make a motion to accept the PP&FA recommendation.
Thank you, Steve. This is Bill Hayes. I second the motion. We'll now move to discussion on the motion on the floor. Does anyone on the call have any questions, comments for Clint on this report recommendation? Hearing none, we will move to a roll call vote. Steve Horn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill Hayes, how do you vote? Yes. Motion passes unanimously. We will now move, before we leave that, we've had an email relating to the rates from a resident, and we need to at least discuss that at some point. Would you like to do that now, since it's related to rates? Easy for me to say. Or do we want to do that at the end of the meeting when we go into director's report and board comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, we put it right, we attached it to this agenda item. We thought this would be a good time to give an update on the rates and the customer charge for the.
Okay. All right.
So a few things have happened regarding the implementation of the customer charge, both during the introduction of it to the selectmen and during the budget review. We had 2 selectmen that expressed their concern about the impact of the customer charge on low residential users and on small businesses. And they asked that we continue the discussion of this charge with the board.
Okay.
There's no way, and I think as part of, I wanted to give a little bit, then we did have a couple emails. One came in from Mr. Zubrick, one from Mr. Lucy, about the calculation of it and the break-even point, which I can talk about here in 1 second. The board's aware there is no way to sugarcoat that a customer charge affects someone that has 0 or no electricity usage the most, which was why it was recommended in the first place through the efficiency audit. And just to remind the board, the actual amount that the efficiency audit recommended was a $32 per month customer charge. What that means is when we go through all the finances for any Danvers resident or a small business, just to have them connected, us read the meter, do all the services that we need to provide, it costs us $32 a month per customer without them using any electricity. That's why the report came up with that. When the board talked about the customer charge, we realized the implementation of a $32 per month charge would just be too far out of the realm. Not something that would be acceptable or a good thing to do to our customers. So this board was left with the decision that it's a very good business decision to do a customer charge. However, it's the hardest on our small customers, both our small businesses and our small residences. We understand that. After we got the recommendation from the efficiency report of the $32, we went, staff and actually working with the board, looked at various customer charges, $0, $5, $7.50, $10. We looked at a whole lot of those. And just to kind of look at the numbers and find out what's the one that would fit Danvers the best. And at the end of that day, we ended up with the $7.50 charge. A couple of members of the Board of Selectmen, a few members of the public, they've asked us, take a look at that. It seems hard on a small customer. One thing I wanted to clarify, during our analysis, we looked at what the break-even point for our customers was when you implemented both the $7.50 customer charge and the corresponding decrease in the PPFA. When we talked about it, we wanted to get it as close to middle of the road, or close to flat, or a 0% overall increase for our average customer. We knew we didn't get quite there. Our average customer is 750, and 750 kWh per month, and we knew we weren't going to get 0. One thing we've been saying is that at the 750, our average customer, or that has a 0% net increase, was the 1,200 kWh per month. That's not correct. The 1,200 kWh was for the $5 per month customer charge. So as we went back somehow, I'll take responsibility. We got off the rails in corresponding those charts, and it's the $5 per month customer charge that gets us at level. The 750 puts us at a 1% increase. Do they have that right, Clint? It's a 1% increase. So,
Yep.
okay. For the average, for the average customers, the break-even point at the 750 is a customer with 1,736 kWh per month. That's assuming they get the discount. If they don't take the discount, it's higher. It's more like 1,900 per cubic per month, 1,900 kWh. So we have a delta there. It's not, so where we are at the 750, for someone to break even, they need to use 1,736 kWh per month. We also have figured out that, which is a lot of our residential customers. It's not the average, it's a lot. So that's different than we thought, than when I thought, and I think when the board thought when we adopted the customer charge. So I wanted to bring that up so that we can have a discussion about where we wanted to be and where we thought we should be with that customer charge. Same thing with the small commercials, the G1s. It's the majority of our G1s are being affected by that customer charge. They saw a rate increase. Modest, but they did see a rate increase. So that's, I wanted to get that out. Two things. We know why it was recommended. Obviously, it was recommended a lot higher than what we did. However, I did want to have a discussion with the board this morning that the number we have affects the majority of our residential customers, and it affects the majority of our G1 customers. Does that make sense to the board, how I just explained that?
Steve, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Dave. I think, knowing the R1, the G1, the G2, G3, like, how many customers we have in those buckets, I think that would be nice to know where those customers could be. Maybe in another meeting, a couple months down the line, that would be, just good for us to know how many customers we have. I feel comfortable with the $7.50. I think with what we need to do with our network of, in our grid, we need to make sure that our grid is sound. And I think looking at other utility bills, personally, you see all these service charges to some degree to bring that service to your home. So I feel comfortable with the $7.50, realizing that there were some numbers that weren't correct in the skewing of the numbers, but I do think $7.50 is fine. I think the CSR recommendation was $23.22, and that's a significant. I think that's significant, but I think we've done a great job, and if we want to revisit it in June when we're doing the rate structures, I'd be comfortable with that. But as far as I'm concerned, I think it's fine where it's at. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Steve. This is Bill. David, just one question. When you said at the 1736 or even 1900, that's a lot of our customers. I just want to clarify that comment. That means a lot of our customers are affected before they get to the break even. Is that correct?
Correct. The percent increase decreases as you get higher. As you get closer to the 1700 kWh per month, it's less than a 1% increase. But there's, the majority of our customers saw between a 0 and a 1% increase.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I thought that's what you meant, but I just, as I told Clint, I'm easily confused. So my comments, I guess, will mirror Steve's. I think a lot of good work was done. A good decision was made to contract for the cost of service study. I think the management team took a serious look at this and came up with the different recommendations from $5 all the way up to $20, if I recall correctly. That's what Lucy has in his email. And I think the recommendation was up to what, $32, $34 from the cost of service study. Was that correct? The top, or was it?
I see this 23, 22.
He said 23.
23, okay, I guess I had it backwards in my mind. Anyway, we looked at anywhere from $5 up to the recommendation from the cost of service study by an industry consultant. I think we need to go back and look at what was the purpose of that study, what was the purpose of the recommendation, and then thus what was the recommendation from the management team. The purpose of the study was a concern that as we continue to deal with declining sales, higher efficiency, way to go, Jeff, and rising cost of transmission, and at least temporarily lowered cost of electricity, we needed to come up with a way to ensure the fiscal health of Danvers Electric. And so we were walking that tight wire between how much are we going to impact customers by the necessity of ensuring the financial health of Danvers Electric. And as the Volunteer Oversight Board, I believe we have a responsibility to do both. So that is a tight wire act, and I think the management team fully recognized that in providing an analysis of several different levels of customer charge, and coming up with a recommendation at the lower end of that range of options. I too am comfortable with the 750. I haven't really yet digested Mr. Lucy's email. I don't think I saw the one from Mark Zubrick. his seems to say that he's done some math that came up with something different, and at a quick reading, I think he wasn't taking into account the effect of us also lowering the fuel charge at the same time we implemented the customer charge. So I think that's why he has a different rate. Is that correct?
No, no, Mr. Lucy, his numbers are on track. They're very close to ours, and so I'll be following up with him. But if we look at Clint's spreadsheets on how the corresponding decrease, Clint's numbers are matching up very closely to Mr. Lucy's. The biggest difference is when we do the calc, we figure in the discount to do that for a customer. If you want to save the most, we do it with taking the discount, which makes ours a little bit different than how Mr. Lucy does it.
Okay.
The only thing was Mr. Lucy, I believe, thought that the calc had been done by the efficiency audit, and that's not true. The efficiency audit had the recommendation of the $22 dollars per month, and we did the calculations locally about all the different options and what the savings would be.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I guess my bottom line is that I think the management team took a good look at it seriously, and with looking at both, trying to think of the right word, both constituencies, the health of Danvers Electric and the impact on our customer base. I am comfortable with the recommendation that was made, and I am comfortable with the decision that the board made in selecting amongst those as recommended by the management team. I guess I would ask you, Dave, the select board has asked that you continue the discussion with the MLB. Have we fulfilled that charge?
So I believe we fulfilled it today, having this discussion. I will also let the town manager and the selectmen know that in accordance with our PPNFA and rate setting policy, that we try to set rates twice a year, in January and in June, which would take effect July 1st. So we'll be having another rate discussion in June to see how we're doing with PPNFA, and if there's anything different with the customer charge, or if any other financial stuff come up, we can discuss it at that time.
Okay. I had a thought which slipped away. Let me take a second and get it back here. The purpose of the charge was to ensure the health of Danvers Electric, and to ensure that health by collecting a relatively small additional fee from customers who have the benefit of being connected to Danvers Electric, but only when they need to. And in the meantime, I'll use the term they're riding free. They have the security of being attached to us so that they have continuous electric service, whether from their own solar or in the small amounts as needed. And yet Danvers Electric expends significant costs to service those customers, even with very small or no sales. So it is impacting people that it's intended to impact, those who have the service but don't buy much of it. I don't know how we avoid impacting those people when that was the analysis that was provided by the consultant, supported and very significantly mitigated by the recommendation from the management team to have a very low customer charge to start, and approved by the MLB. I guess I would recommend, Dave, when you go back to the town manager, that you also say this is something we would probably look at increasing next January, because that is the reality of the situation. As we look at Clint's graph of our sales over the last 5 years, what we know is that will probably continue as solar becomes more popular. And the big offsets would be if we get more electric vehicles and if we get more people converting to electric heat pumps to heat and cool their homes, I would expect those would increase our sales. And I guess I would ask Clint, do you have any idea, or does the E&E forecast show when does it show turning around as a reflection of those forecasts? Is there any turning around and an increase in sales?
Yeah, I think where we're at, we've absorbed. I can't remember the term. There's a nice term for it's like the efficiency implosion, something like that. But we've kind of absorbed that main impact, and that was really, an LED bulb 5-6 years ago cost $10. Now they cost $2. You can't even buy an incandescent bulb. So we've kind of absorbed a lot of the brunt of the efficiency impact. Now we're kind of leveling off, and then hopefully with some electrification, we turning the trend upwards a little bit, hopefully.
So we recently participated in a power supply, online conferences to talk about those trends. And all the charts do show a gradual trend of increasing electric sales due to the electric vehicles and other such items. The curves are flatter than what they thought they were going to be 5 years ago. They really thought our sales were going to spike right up. So we see a flat or a gradual curve going forward, Bill.
Okay, so we think we may be at the bottom of the trough now, and it's a much shallower trough than was predicted 5 years ago.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Would that, if that forecast becomes reality, would that affect our need for the customer charge in any significant way?
So the customer charge is based on our operating costs divided by our number of customers. That's our fixed costs if we don't sell any electricity. So those costs are going to change independently of the power supply market. It's going to be different. The only thing affecting those are inflation and that kind of thing of operational costs. What it's going to cost to operate our system. So sales is not going to sales not going to decrease that. If we have higher sales, we do have some costs that are associated with how much we sell. And if we sell more, those costs get spread among KWH more. So, some of our lines and stuff. So if we sell more power, it's a good thing for us. The whole overall costs per KWH go down. So the more so on that side, because there are costs associated with power supply that once we sell more power, they will go down.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the answer is the need for the customer change won't be impacted significantly by somewhat increased sales, if I can reiterate what I think you said. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. I am satisfied that we have complied with the request of the select board to continue the discussion. And do you need a motion, Dave, from the board?
Nope, no, just that we had the discussion, and that's great. And I'll copy you guys in on, the report of this discussion to the town manager.
Okay.
We did have one more item on this to discuss when you're ready.
Okay. I guess I would request that you include, as you said, we'll take another look at it in June as part of our normal twice a year, and that we would again look at it in December for January implementation, but that in December, we would be looking at an increase in the customer charge to get closer to the recommendation of the cost of service study and the realities of our operational costs needing to be covered by the low usage customers. That would avoid a surprise and maybe going through this again. That we, as we repeat this over the course of the next 9 months, that it won't be a big surprise when it happens. And yes, we might still get emails, but we would have been transparent in forecasting the need for an increase in the customer charge. Does that make sense to you, Dave?
Yes, it does. And I do want to remind the board, because I get, we get correspondence, and we heard it at the budget meetings of the corresponding view of, let's transfer these costs through the KWH, and therefore we're putting most of that onto our biggest customers that can absorb it the best, or it's more easy for them to absorb these costs. And the more we keep operational costs on the KWH, the more it's spread among, the more KWH we sell, it gets spread among the larger users more. So that's just the corresponding view to that. It may not pass the fairness issue, however, it's the other view is that it gets passed among customers that can absorb those costs more easier.
I guess I'm always a believer, and have been for a long time, that where the complaint's from is whose ox is being gored, as the old expression was. So if we shift it onto the KWH cost, then we will hear from the large users that we are impacting their competitiveness, and we are becoming less friendly to large business in our town. So I would think that however and whenever we have a need to increase the rate, we will hear something. And we have to be motivated by fairness and transparency and doing the right thing for both our customers, small and large and residential, and the health of the business that we are charged to protect. Okay, Dave?
Oh, one other quick, the other item that was brought up through the meetings was, has the board looked at block rates similar to what we have on the water and sewer side for the electric side? And I just wanted to address that question. The issue of block rates has not been brought up or recommended for electric at this point, due to the fact that the reasons why we did it on the water side don't exist on electric. We did it on the water side because we want to discourage use. We want customers to conserve water because we only have a finite amount of water to use. So we're using block rates partially as a measure to discourage lawn watering and using a lot of water so that we don't run out of water, because we only have so much. On the electric side, right now we have capacity in our system to sell more power. We can buy more power and we can sell it. The electric conservation program was designed in order to teach our customers how they could save money. Not a good thing for the business, as I'm showing Bill Hayes how he can use less electricity when we want to be selling him as much as possible. It's just because we want to do the right thing environmentally, is conserving electricity. Don't waste it. So that's why our conservation program was designed and is now being regulated, that we have to have one to do that. And like Clint said, the conservation items are flattening out right now. However, we don't know what new technology is coming down around the corner tomorrow, which makes our light bulbs or our air conditioners even more efficient. Their electric motors, more stuff is coming. So that's why we have not recommended block rates for electric, because it's not a finite resource. On the flip side, and we'll talk a little bit later, through the efficiency report, and you've heard us report to this board, on the electric industry, the rate trend is going towards time of use rates. That's the biggest change, which is going to be coming to us over the next 10 years, because electricity costs us different amount of money to buy at different times of the day and night. Right now, we're flattening that out for our customers, so they see a flat rate. However, in the future, the trend is towards time of use rate. So if you use electricity at the expensive time of day, you pay that rate. If you use it in the inexpensive time of day, you pay that rate. More to come on that later.
Okay.
Peter looks thrilled on time of use rates.
What was that, Steve?
Peter looks thrilled on the time of use rate.
It complicates his world immensely.
Yes, it does. So,
Okay. Since we don't need a motion, is there any further discussion from anybody on the call? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the engineering report from Jason Small. Jason, you have the floor.
Thank you.
And-
I thought I unmuted and I actually muted myself, so.
Oh, okay. Well, you seem to have disappeared from the camera for what it's worth.
Okay. There we go.
There
That's
you
what I
go.
thought.
Yep,
Probably
now
thought I was
you're back.
unmuting. I hit the camera. I'll start off on slide 2, which is the project updates. So first off, on Northland Sub, we're continuing discussing the easement and restoration agreements with the property owner. And I know every month it kind of reads the same, but actually throughout the month, we do have a lot of email exchanges between the customer and ourselves. So it is actually progressing. We're getting kind of close. I don't want to say that we're there, but we are getting towards a common goal. So that is moving forward. And in the meantime, we do have a firm providing some conceptual engineering. We've seen a couple of different options for drawings using the layout of the easement. And they're continuing to work through that. And hopefully in a few weeks, we'll have a full conceptual design and recommendation from the vendor, from the consultant. So that is.
Jason, could I interrupt just a sec? Remembering back to Eric Mitchell's suggestion that when we have a subject, we discuss the purpose of it.
Okay.
Could you just briefly tell us what the project is? And that, I think, for people watching, that would give them a better understanding of what you're reporting on.
Okay. Several years ago, we had a consultant do a study on our system on looking at loading and discussing the option to change service voltages. And the recommendation out of that study was to maintain our 4 kV. But with that came a lot of recommendations for some 4 kV project updates. We have some aging 4 kV substations that we're working to replace or eliminate with other projects. So one of them is we have a substation at Northland called Northland Sub. It's over at the Liberty Tree Mall. It is on the, it's been there for a while. It has some asset condition issues that we're going to try to fix by building a new one. And in the meantime, right now, it has 2 circuits out of it and there's 1 transformer. We are going to build a new substation right next to it that's going to have 2 transformers with a bus and an auto transfer and the ultimate ability to put out 6 circuits. And that's going to help eliminate a couple other aging substations in our town as well when we get those circuits up and running. So this project is primarily the focus point out of that study. We're trying to move forward with that as quickly as we can to do all the other projects.
Thank you. That's a good thing. That would significantly increase our ability to service the area. I assume add redundancy and reliability also. Is that part of that?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And so like I said, we made some progress in the last month and it continues to move forward and hopefully soon we'll be able to go into full engineering.
Do we have any idea when, just as a ballpark estimate, that substation might be operational? And I recognize that's significantly down the road.
Right now, with everything we know, we're tentatively thinking, assuming that the easement continues to move forward and progress at a regular pace, sometime probably by the year of 2023, end of it. However, one of the outputs of the conceptual engineering is a little bit more detailed schedule than what we have right now. So once we have that, we'll be able to confirm or adjust the schedule as needed. But right now, tentatively by the end of 2023.
Okay. Yeah, and that's just a ballpark, and I understand that, and wouldn't hold you to it. Okay. Thank you, Jason.
And then Station 42 Control House. We haven't talked about this in a little while because it was kind of on hold. Basically, our control house at our main substation at Station 42 is pretty old and has no room for like any additional equipment if we needed it for relay protection. So we did do a conceptual engineering about a year and a half ago on where that new controls could fit and how it ties into all the assets at the substation, and that was completed. And then we were going to move into final engineering when it became aware to us that we had to do a designer selection process. And then we got there, the pandemic hit, and it was kind of put on hold until we could get back in on a regular basis, which we now are. So we have started to pick that back up, and we are working on the designer selection process right now. So ideally with that one, we'd like to have that hopefully in service by the end of next year or early 2023, but we think that might be doable. Water Street, we have done several cutovers in the last month. We still have quite a few left. These are typically going to be outages to customers and have to be scheduled, so that's why it'll take probably another couple of months as we schedule these outages and give everybody proper notice. Just an update on what that project is. One of our circuits out of the Danvers Port Sub on Endicott Street was over our loading criteria for what we designed for on a circuit, so we needed to offload some of that load onto an adjacent circuit. So we did some conductor and pole replacements on Water Street, got another circuit down to the area of the load. That load has been cut over to the adjacent circuit. That was one of the cutovers that was done. And then also in that area, the existing circuit we reconducted to get improved reliability and capacity. And the remaining cutovers are to get the remaining load back onto the new conductor. So like I said, hopefully that'll be done in the next couple months. Standards are, as I know we talked about, is complete. The presentation to implement is complete, and we're scheduling the rollout meeting for early April. So hopefully by the next meeting, that'll be done. And then last month I talked about pole 112-13 Preston Street, which was cracked and required an emergency replacement, and we had to set several of the poles in that area to accommodate that. That project is now complete.
Jason, quick question. Did that generate a double pole situation, or it was a complete total cutover?
It created double poles, 6 or 7 of them. We are 100% off the poles, so it's next ball on court.
Okay. Thank you.
Moving to slide 3. We took some time, went through our outage database for 2020 and generated some reliability statistics. So on this slide, the first chart on the left-hand side is the system average interruption duration index, which below I put the formula. It's the total duration of customer interruptions divided by the total number of customers served. So basically, not every customer in our system sees an outage, but if you take up all the duration of all the outages and divide by the total number of customers, the average, every customer would have seen 0.723 hours, which is like 40, a little over 40 minutes. So, and that's the SAIDI. Also on the slide, I did the customer average interruption duration index, and that formula is the total duration of customers interrupted divided by the total number of customers interrupted. So if a customer is interrupted, this is how long they averaged to be without power until we restore them on all the outages. And that's 1.152 hours. So it's about 70 to 80 minutes, something like that, a little over an hour. And that's that one. I guess I'll open up to any questions on this slide before I move to the next one, because these are kind of statistics and they tend to, and as you can see also, I guess I'll point out, I ran it for the last, back to 2017, and on SAIDI we solely inclined, or actually recently we did incline a little bit on how long the average customer is out, and then, but on KD you'll see from 19 to 20 we went down significantly.
Okay. Steve, do you have any questions for Jason on that graph?
Jason, I do, thank you, Bill. Jason, would weather be a factor in seeing these indexes increase?
Yes, and then actually on slide 5, I kind of do outage causes, and I think weather is on there, and I compared 2020 to the average of the 3 years prior, and when we get there, you'll see that it actually in 2020 was up.
Okay.
But yes, on hold, we're seeing more storms, more significant storms, and driving these numbers a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Only question, Bill. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Jason, no, I'm glad to see these. And I'll go into it a little more when we get to comments at the end, but one of our mission statement goals is to deliver reliable service, and here's a measure of our reliability. So that's good to see. Thank you. I think the 2 graphs are clear, and I'm glad to see them. Thank you. You have the floor again, Jason, to continue.
Okay, on slide 4, more reliability numbers. On the left-hand side is the system average interruption frequency index, and that formula is the total number of customers interruptions divided by the total number of customers served. So this is how often do customers see an outage on the entire system. So in 2020, it was about 62.7% of our customers would have potentially seen an outage. It's like it just averages out over the total number of customers. It might not be that much. We might have had, obviously we have repeat outages in certain areas. So, but if you were to take that across all the customers served, the average customer would have seen potentially have gotten an outage at 62.7%. So 30% might not have seen any outages.
Yeah, so less than 1 outage per year on average.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And that
in that particular index, for example, yesterday my power clicked off and was back on within seconds. Would that interruption make this index?
No, these are sustained outages. So momentaries do not go into these numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I'm not sure if there's a new statistic that's being presented to the board. It's kind of been around the last few years in the industry standard. So we were able to calculate that this year, and that's the average system availability index. And that formula is the total number of customer hours available divided by the total number of customer hours. So this is basically how often when a customer needs the power to be there, is the power there? So what that formula really means is if you add up all the hours of interruptions across the year and subtract that from 1, because you're trying to get how often is it on, and then you divide by the total number of available customer hours in a year, that 24 hours a day times 365. So how often is the power there? And in 2020, we were there 99.992% of the time. So even though it's down slightly from prior years, that is still really reliable. So I'll take questions on that before I get into the outage causes.
Okay, Steve, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on your comment there, Bill, because I think that was good. What's the time that we would consider an incident? With a flicker, obviously you said no. Is it 15 minutes? Is it 2 hours? Do we have a measurement?
Yes, 5 minutes typically. So our meters with the AMI, they will report back to our system that they are out after 5 minutes.
Okay.
So it's not considered an outage until it's been out 5 minutes for the purposes of these indexes.
Right. So based on our meter reporting, I'll tell you based on how our system is programmed, I think the longest interval between reclosing operations is 40 or 50 seconds. So realistically speaking, if you're out for over a minute, it's going to stay out. So it just becomes, we say 5 minutes, but realistically speaking, you're probably looking at anything over a minute.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, Jason, I have no additional questions beyond that. Thank you. Continue, please.
So for the 2020 outage causes, in the, I guess the dark orange / red is 2020, and then the regular orange is 2017 and 19 average. So for tree-related issues, we're consistent. We see about 3 per year for outage causes. And then, as you can see, for last year, we had 2 transmission-related outages, so that's loss of source from our supplier. And historically, on average, it's 0, although you'll see there's a slight little bar there, so it rounded down to 0. But so there have been a couple in the past 3 years, but the average is out to basically 0. And those would typically be larger customer outages as we lose a bus, and that it would explain some of the other reliability numbers I've already gone over as why there was an uptick in 2020. You'll also see, as we talked about previously, 2 storms, lightning causes. Over the last 3 years, prior to 3 years, we'd seen about 3 a year. Last year we had 7. So that's pretty big increase. Other I'd have to look into, others could be a lot of different things, but typically average around 0, and we had 1. And you can see that in 0, there's a little bit of a bar, so maybe once out of the last 3 years, we had another other. So kind of on average there. Motor vehicle accidents went up significantly. We had 6 in 2020, where we typically average around 2, and where they've hit poles and actually caused outages. And then for equipment failure, we typically average 23, and we had 22. I'll just get into that a little bit, the breakdown on that. The bulk of those equipment failures are transformer fuses and overhead primary cable failures. So with that, there is going to be, I'm working on reclassifying how we categorize equipment failure when it comes to fuses. There's different viewpoints on how to do that, whether it's equipment failure or not. I think I'd like to go with the viewpoint because it clarifies better data and leads to better information. Is if a fuse blows and it's not an apparent overload or apparent swirl or tree, they've been marking it down as equipment failure. But in my viewpoint, and I think if I were to talk it over, and I've talked over with Clint, is that if the fuse blows, it blew for a reason and it's doing its job. It's not an equipment failure. So I think moving forward, you're going to see these numbers go down, and you might see a couple of these others around tree or animal may go up or even overload. So we'll put them in the right classification and help us drive to about better data and better ideas of where we need to work on to improve reliability. Animal, we typically see about 3, and we saw 3, and then we haven't really had any unknown or human errors on outage causes. Any questions on that?
Steve?
None, thank you.
Okay. Jason, just a nit. On the prior slides, you moved from left to right, from oldest to newest. On this one, you're moving from right to left, from oldest to newest. And I just wonder if it wouldn't be a better continuous presentation to keep that same process of moving from left to right in age, because it kind of looks like it just gives if people aren't paying attention to as they read it to the legend, then they might get the wrong impression, and it would look like storms went down if you didn't read the legend. So just a suggestion. Other than that, good data, thank you. And I absolutely agree with taking a look at the category and the equipment failure. And if you can categorize them better, it gives us better data to react to the causes and identify corrective actions. So thank you. That's my comments. Please continue.
Okay. Just to see where Danvers sits in neighboring municipalities, and I think there's a couple of IOUs in here as well. I'm using 2019 data. I know I just went over 2020. The reports that come out that summarize all of the local utilities don't come out till about October of this year. So I'll have to wait a little bit to get the 2020 comparison. But I went back to 2019, and then the numbers in here are 2019 numbers to compare apples to apples. And as you mentioned, I did go, on this one, I did go from the lowest duration to the highest duration. So this one is the SAIDI, the System Average Interruption Duration Index. And the without MED is without major event days. So if you have a big named storm that comes through and you're doing storm duty for several days, that's a major event. Those outages would not count against your reliability statistics. And so that's how we're comparing them. And as you can see, Danvers falls roughly right in the middle at 38.46 minutes in 2019 was the average duration of an outage across the entire system. And you can also, I also put the numbers below the customer counts, and you'll see that it really kind of doesn't matter whether you're large or small. It kind of comes, just, so any questions on that?
No, Steve? Just a question, Jason. How did you select the towns? Because you look at this and we're kind of just past the middle on the right. So, you know, a quick glance is, oh, wow, we're kind of in the worst half, probably just beyond the half. But was there any particular logic you used? Was that what was available, or?
Pretty much that's what was available in the report that comes out. There were other municipals in there, but if they didn't report their data, they were blank, so I left them off.
Sure.
So I just, whoever had reported data in 2019 in Massachusetts was what I looked at.
Okay. When you look at it, and we're just slightly in the upper half. Does that concern you at all, or is 38 minutes a pretty darn good number? That was kind of the other question I had was, you know, what's the impact here? What's the message that we want this slide to tell us?
I would say that 38 minutes is probably a good number, and if you actually look to the one to the right, those numbers climb up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Like Holyoke is 50 minutes, and then you go right up to 68 in Taunton, 70 in N-Star, 80 in Westfield. So they start to really climb up quick. So I think it represents roughly an average, I would say.
Yeah. I was just thinking, particularly on this one, that maybe an annotation that says, you know, this is a pretty good measure when compared, you know, just what's the bottom line kind of message. Where I had worked in my career, when giving a presentation, one of the ways of doing that was called tell them, tell them, tell them. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. And this slide kind of reminded me of that process of tell us what you're trying to tell us there. Just maybe helps get the message across a little clearer is all. Again, just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
So for the customer average interruption duration index, we are towards the higher end in 2020, which was 121 minutes. I mean, this is 2019. I think this was one of the numbers that did improve in 2020, where we were just over an hour, I believe. Let's go back to the slide. We're at 1.1 hour, so about 66 minutes. So actually in 2020, we would have been down by between Reading and Fitchburg Gas. So we did make good improvement there in the last year, but in 2019, we're on the higher end. Probably I would say that number could have improved, which it did in 2020, which is good. So hopefully we continue to see that improvement. I would have to really go back to the 2019 data to determine what led to that number, because I believe it's out of whack with the other years too. Yeah, it's way 2019 was an abnormal for Katy.
Yep.
Based on other years. So
Yeah.
So Bill, we agree, and you guys are getting kind of the raw numbers today from right out of Jason's report, and we agree. Before we present this to the selectmen and to the town, we need to say, hey, how do we compare? How does this mean we stack up against other people? Jason just hit on a very good point. Once we get this raw data, we have to go back and look at it and see, are there certain things that popped up that skewed it? And the system has ways for us to adjust that, to take care of that. We don't want to. We want the numbers to reflect actual stuff, but we don't want, like, you know, one thing that was on there all of a sudden to skew off everything for the year. The third thing is, part of our report also we look at this, and Jason was just alluding to that. We go back and look and say, wait a second, what did pop our numbers up? Is there things within our control that we can do to improve this? Years ago, we used it to adjust our tree trimming policy and how much tree trimming we did. It could be certain kinds of equipment we need to replace the batteries in more often. A lot of things like that. We use it to self-assess.
Thank you, David. Steve, do you have any questions, comments for Jason?
No questions. Great data. You know, it's, and, you know, I think, as you point out with the, you know, 2019 could have been not an outlier, but, you know, a little bit different than prior years for a number of different reasons. So, thank you.
I also just want to point out that, you know, this is done in a database, like an access database, and, you know, hopefully in the future, OMS will come along and be in production, and that has the capability to run all these reports. It should improve data capture, report capability, easier availability to analyze some of these numbers. So, which we should have and be able to use hopefully for next year. So that's one of the good benefits of the OMS system.
Great. I was going to comment on this one, Jason. Is high good or bad? And I assumed it was bad. And again, it just goes back to the need to annotate, as David pointed out. You know what drove that, and again, you know, where I worked, it's the belief was very strong that you can't improve anything that you don't measure. So the first step is to measure. And that's what you're getting at here, and I'm really pleased to see it. And then, of course, once you measure it and you see where you are, then you take the next step, as David stated, that you look into what's driving it, and then that identifies corrective action possibilities. So I think this is great. I'm really glad to see it. Thank you. Please continue, Jason.
And moving on to slide 8 is the system average interruption frequency. So as we talked about on the system, what percent of the customers kind of see an outage in a given year? And in 2019, I'd say we're pretty, even though it looks like we're kind of slightly to the right, I would say that's a pretty good number at only 31.7% customers saw an outage. And if you look to the left, all the numbers are kind of in the same area between 20 and 30%. So I want to say that that's a pretty good number. And then as you go to the right, you can see those numbers climb up significantly, where I would say that there's a big jump between Danvers and, like, say, Belmont at 73%. I would say going from 31 to 73% is a big jump. So even though we're kind of slightly to the right, I think we're pretty good right where we kind of needed to be in 2019, roughly.
Steve? Yeah, thank you. Steve?
Excuse me, no further questions.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jason. That slide looks good. You know, as you point out, that we're just to the right, but it's a big jump beyond us. So, yeah, we're in the right population there. Okay, is that it?
And that is it. I'll take any other questions if anybody has them.
Okay, Steve, do you have any final questions? No?
I have no further questions for Jason. Thank you, Jason.
I don't either, Jason. I think that's an excellent report. Glad to see it. Does anybody else on the team have any questions or comments for Jason? Nope. Hearing none, we'll move on. We don't need a motion on that. Engineering report. Next is the efficiency audit policy recommendation update. Do we have that?
So the board asked that we put this on the agenda today, just to give you guys a quick update where we are on this. No need to be writing everything down, because it's really going to be outlined when we give the update of the old dashboard, Bill, the old dashboard, which Clint and Jason are completing. That it's going to be an MS project, which will have these action items listed and where we are on them.
Okay.
At a high
Now-
level, we wanted to make sure that the board remembered that in addition to policies, there was some, big operational things that the efficiency audit had recommended. One of which was the financial management package, to look at upgrading our software and system on that, which is in progress. The other thing was to look at the customer charge, which we did. The Third thing is recommended in there, which we mentioned earlier in the meeting, is the time of use rates. So obviously, we're not ready to talk about that yet. However, it was recommended in the report, and they talk extensively about the market trends and where that whole issue is going. On the financial policies, which is where we're kind of focusing on right now with the board, there was 7 financial policies that were recommended for the division. The first one was the investment policy, which once we tracked down the new investment policy that the town had adopted, we adopted that same one for Danvers Electric, and we sent out a copy of that to the board. The second was the PPNFA policy, which we finished up here at the beginning of the year. The third, in which is the number 3 and 4 on the list, is the reserve policy and the rate stabilization policy. Meaning, how much are we going to keep in the bank for emergencies? That's the next one that we'll be presenting to the board and we're working on. Is $11 million enough in the bank? Is it too much, too small? What should we call the account? How should we set that policy? So we've already had staff meetings on that. And the board, Steve may not know, but the board, we've had multiple recommendations on what that number should be. We're working through that, and we're closing in on a recommendation to the board on rate stabilization policy and the reserve accounts policy. After that will come the unrestricted cash policy. How much cash we have on hand in the bank. Right now, we look at Peter's number and it's positive, so we think we're good. However, we'd like to do a little better than that. Peter, thank you. We're way better than when it used to be minus anyways. So we've made strides in the good direction, but now we need to further refine that, the unrestricted cash policy. And then the last one is the funding for future debt payments, unfunded liabilities, and I'll throw the capital in with that. That's going to be a big one when we set our policy on debt, on capital improvements, which I'm hopeful that the policy number 7 will have guidance to us on when we go and set the depreciation amount, whether that's 3, 4, 5%, whatever that is. It'll set to where we want the depreciation account to be. You know, right now we have a healthy depreciation account. We're looking ahead 5 years. We have an idea it's going to fund our programs that we plan for the next 5 years, but we'd like to formalize the policy on that. And then in number 7, probably the hardest thing is going to be on the unfunded liabilities policy. But that will probably mirror some of state law and some of what the town has. Even though we've picked up on our retirement unfunded liability right now we're fully funded. Changes in the actuarial could change that. We still have our OPEB liability out there. So, but we'll be working that through with the town as the town works to set a policy on the OPEB also. And it could be as simple of we get better on it every year. We'll see. So that's where we are on the recommendations from the efficiency audit. And like I said, it'll be more descriptive. Everything will be laid out when we have that MS project dashboard.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments on the engineering report and related topics? Hearing none, we will move on to utility director's update to the board.
So our best news of the day is that we're here to congratulate Jason Small, who's been officially appointed our new Director of Engineering and Operations. Actually, that's not his title. It is, he's the Engineering and Operations Manager. So Jason, we're very excited to have him in the job. He's already hit the ground running. So great addition to the team. And I think from the board can see, you know, his work and everything is just outstanding. He gets the whole picture and we're so excited. And I think the whole team's excited to have Jason there. So working very well. Congratulations, Jason, and we welcome you aboard. And so one of the conditions of getting him there was that right away we're going to get work to replace his previous position. So we have his old job already posted, and Jason will work with us to get that filled.
Congratulations, Jason, well deserved.
Thank you.
I certainly agree. Happy to see it, Jason. I think it's well-deserved. Congratulations to you. And I already like what I'm seeing. So
Thank you.
I think it's a great selection, Dave. And just out of curiosity, why'd the title change? Is that something you can talk about, or is that a personnel issue?
Well, I think that when the town manager really wanted to get the position out of the union and have it as a non-union position, he had to come up with a new title. So,
Okay. To me, director sounds higher than manager, but it's just a word. And if that's what it took, that's what it took. And I agree that it should be a management team position, certainly. Okay, congratulations, Jason.
well, and I think we can all see, that's an indication of Jason's modesty and confidence that he's not hung up on a job title. He'll let his job performance speak for himself.
Yeah.
And we could call him anything, and we'd get the same performance out of Jason. So that's why Clint and I obviously we were instructed what to entitle it, but we knew it wouldn't be anything derogatory in this case. He directs us at times, so as he should.
Well, I've always thought that managing up is a big part of any manager's job. So it's good to see he's already got that skill set in use. Okay, congratulations, Jason.
On the personnel side, the interviews are underway for the health safety and environmental position that we finally got authorization to fill, and we have a lot of in-house interest in that. So we'll have to let the process go through, but we're hopeful that we can get somebody in-house that wants to move up into that position. We hate that we have to backfill another, but we'd always like to see people progress up through our team. That's the HSE position. Systems engineers posted, and we also have a first-class technician posted. That's working over under Bob Brown in the tech services. We've been waiting to get that posted and finally push that through. So got Jason on board. Now we got 3 more positions to fill here. Financial management software, they're continuing on the team on that. Nothing new on the DPU investigation. The team is working on the website updates. It's challenging, really trying to look through what our options are. We can have our own input into the website and still follow the town standard template. So I think we sent out, Angelica did a great job putting together the explanation of the Danvers Electric bill, which some people may find very complicated. However, all the information on there needs to be on there. That Angelica put it on there. So she did a great, and Angelica, is this on the website already?
Yes, it is. It's under the electric rate page, right under the residential.
Great. So that's already up there. The other thing is the efficiency audit. I thought that was already up there, but I believe that it's going through that process right now of getting the efficiency audit up on the website. So that will be up there shortly, and we're looking at other ways to improve the website. So the team's actively engaged in that, and we appreciate the comments from the board on good ideas for the website. Actually, I'm working on the email addresses for the board, so we'll get that so that to get each of the board members an email address at danversma.gov, so you can use that for official business. And there is the date for the meeting on the landfill. I don't know why I didn't write it on my notes here. Hold on with me right a second. Is Wednesday, March 31st at 7 p.m. So that's the public meeting on the landfill. And this is required not because of the solar array, more because of the filling it in with soil. That's the part that we have to get permitted with the DEP, is bringing all the soil in. However, the DEP doesn't want to see a schematic of the solar array. We're showing that to them. So Stephanie, if we could just make sure to send an invite to the board on that meeting. So we'll send a web invite to you guys. Definitely not mandatory you can attend, but you'll be welcome to attend.
Okay, that's a web meeting.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And then, Clint, can you update on the RP3 for us?
Absolutely, Dave, thanks. So the American Public Power Association reserves a designation, what it's known as the RP3, which stands for Reliable Public Power Provider. The designation is reserved for public power utilities across the country that submit an application based on 38 different a set of criteria, including reliability, safety, workforce development, and system improvement. Beginning last year, Danvers Electric started putting the application together, and with the help of our safety and risk manager, Anthony Calashabetta, and then obviously the engineering team and Jason and everybody involved, we were able to get the application put together. It was a huge lift. Submitted it last fall and just kind of waited to hear back. The good news is Danvers Electric we received the platinum level designation for the RP3. Today, actually, this afternoon, will be typically it's in person, but the APPA is having the Engineering Operations Conference, the national conference, and Danvers will be the recipient of that award, which will go into effect May 2021 this year and will be effect for 3 years. So yeah, that's in addition to Jason getting the Engineering Operations Manager position. This just a little more good news this morning. So, and I just want to thank everybody. It was a big effort to go through the application process, but it's obviously it's an even bigger effort to be able to back up all the work and and everything that we do on a daily basis, day in, day out. And it's nice to see that recognition. So.
That's great news. Is that something that we could put on the website too, where, that we won that award? And, I think that's, great job.
We have a press release that'll go out about it, Steve.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a press release would be appropriate. We did that on the customer charge increase, and we've seen a little feedback from that. It'll be nice to put out a good news story as well. And congratulations. I've been on this for just over 3 years now, and I have been very impressed with the team and the job they do, and I think it's a well-deserved award. And I'm glad to see that you guys, made a conscious decision to go after that recognition. I think that's significant that you would undertake it. And I'm, I think you said 38 criteria. I'm sure that was no small task, particularly in light of everything else you guys have been dealing with. And my sincerest congratulations. Good decision to go after it. Obviously a great job in documenting how well you do, and a well-deserved award. Congratulations. Please continue, Clint.
Oh, that's it.
Yep.
That's it, Clint? Okay. Is that it for you, David?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Steve, do you have any questions as a result of David's report?
Nope, no questions from me, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, I'm all set too, David, for now. Thank you. Any questions from the rest of the team for David before we move on from the director's report? Hearing none. The next item is always at this point in the meeting is, Clint, have we received any public comments during the course of the meeting?
No, Bill, we've received none at this time. We did have one person looking for the Veterans Administration Office. Was it?
I don't think we need to discuss that. I agree with your comment. Okay. Then we move next to board members' closing comments and correspondence. Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd just like to congratulate Jason on his new role. That's real happy for you. We're lucky to have people like you, and I think getting that award, platinum level award, is well deserved, but also it shows a lot of the hard work you've done. So those are the only comments. Congratulations all. and we appreciate it. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Let me echo what Steve said. I think it's just very impressive, the job this team does. And I'm so proud, to be ever so slightly associated with that. It's really a pleasure for us on the board, I think, to be associated with you guys, to try and to work desperately to come up ways to challenge you to do even better. That's quite a challenge for us on the board. Having said that, I'll continue my poor attempts to do that. Dave, any update on the combination DPU, water, sewer, and electric facility? I know that's 5 years or more in the future, but any update on that?
Sure. So the audit of our existing facilities, equipment needs has been completed. I don't have the final report on that from the consultant yet, but I expect it shortly. Our town engineer and planning staff has prepared maps for us of open spaces around town, including town-owned land, state-owned land, that we can begin to use to research possible locations. And early next week, I have a meeting set up with our consultant and the town manager and myself to begin formulating the plan for a site selection committee. So we're planning to have the town manager appoint a committee. Obviously, we think he's going to get involvement from the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee. We're not sure how many people it's going to be yet, but the consultant's going to help us design that committee, which will appoint and get them meeting here within the next 60 days.
Great. Sounds like good progress. Thank you. Any update on the Smith School?
Smith School, the project is going along on schedule to get students in the school for September. Clint and Jeffrey have the RFP for the solar panels. It's in draft form, ready to go out. Clint, do we have an approximate date when we think that'll go out? Are we about a month away?
Yeah, we're shooting for mid-April for the advertising.
Mid-April, we'll send out our RFP.
I'm assuming that opening of the school does not require that the solar be in place. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's how it's been designed. So we'd probably have it installed next summer when the kids aren't there, but we'll get to that in the details after the RFP comes in.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. My last one is I'll go back to one of my old reliable themes. I look back at the mission statement again, as I do periodically, and we basically have, as I count them, 5 things that we aim for in our mission statement: high quality, reliability, affordability, operational excellence, and customer service excellence. And as I so often say, having grown up in a business where the belief was that you cannot improve anything that you don't measure, I guess I would ask the team to take it as something to look at, is how do we measure each of those 5 qualities? High quality, reliability, affordability, operational excellence, and customer service excellence. I think we saw from Jason today some measures of reliability. We certainly have affordability in Clint's graph of our rates compared to several towns and the investor-owned utilities. I guess I haven't seen in my time on the board any measures that I relate to the high quality comment, operational excellence, or customer service excellence. And so I would ask that you take a look at those 3 things and ask, is there a measure? How do we think we're doing? How do we measure it? And do we see a need to improve on those 3 items? And then again, I'm going back to an old Stan Svensson thing. How do we communicate with our customer base about how well we're doing? And I did make a point of looking at the website again this morning. And I didn't spend as much time as I had planned to, but I don't think we have, for example, the affordability that Clint's graph provides on there. Or if I did, I didn't, like I said, I didn't spend enough time to really attempt to find it. But it almost struck me as at the bottom of the home page where we have our mission statement, if we had just a few of those kind of, I think, very clear dashboard type items. And to me, the Clint graph is easily understandable as to here's where we stand on affordability. We're right there with the lowest folks, and that's where we want to be. If that was on the home page, and again, the dashboard, kind of like, as I describe it, a car's dashboard, where you get a few gauges. You don't want very many. If there were up to 5 there, I think that would be reasonable. It's probably pressing the limit. 3 might be better. But when you saw the mission statement, you then saw our low cost and one of Jason's reliability graphs, and you guys pick out the one, make sure the message is clear and annotated if need be. I think those would be good additions to the website. Communication is always a challenge for everybody. And as much as I'm saying put stuff on the website, I am also a firm believer that putting something on a website is not communicating in total. We went through the press release on the communication, press release on the customer charge, and I didn't see it in the local version of the Danvers paper. I didn't see anything in the Globe. And when I questioned Stephanie about it, she said, oh, it's on some website, and I forget the name of it. But that's where we do our press releases. It was not something I even knew existed, which is more a comment on me than the town. But as a communication device, it certainly doesn't reach old timers in the town like me. So I think, how we communicate is always a concern. And I would just ask that you guys, think about it. Is there a better way? And think about, again, that picture of a very limited number of dials of a dashboard, maybe on the home page. And the last comment, and that completes that one. The last comment I have is really a question, Dave. What are the terms of our existing board members? I know I was just renewed for 3 years, so I'm at the start of 3 years. Steve, you just came on, in January? So but you filled did he fill an unfulfilled term of Eric? So you're probably on for the duration of that term. I looked at you included us on resent the town manager's note to us. So I'm assuming you're for the 2 years of Eric's unfulfilled term?
I'm assuming so, correct.
Okay. And then I think Mike has been on for 2 years, roughly. So he's got a year left on the board. Okay. So maybe in a year, we'll look at another new member coming on board if Mike doesn't come back for whatever reason. Steve, I sent a new member checklist to you and the management team. Has that been of any value to you? Dave, anybody else, feel free to comment.
So Steve has already contacted us about some of the items on that list, Bill. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we have to kind of push it down the road a little bit. But we'd love to do a lot of in-person meetings, but we're probably still a month, 2 months away from being able to do that.
Yeah, I understand that. But have you provided him with some of the information that was provided to me when I came on board that made up that list?
So he has some of it. I believe there's still more to send to him.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with where I'm at, and I'm in the industry to a certain degree as well, Bill. So what you gave me was very helpful, and and getting these reports from Stephanie has been very helpful too. So, but like anything else, you want to learn more. So,
Okay. Yeah, I'm very comfortable with, in fact, I'm very impressed with how you are after only a couple of months on the board. So, I think you're already asking great questions and contributing significantly.
Oh, thank you.
It's just as I look at, I don't think I came on as well prepared as you seem to be, and I think I was a lot slower coming up to speed. And as you can tell from my questions, still easily confused. So I'm very impressed with how you've done so far. I think you're a great addition to the board. I'm glad to have you. But as I look at stuff, I always try to think about, is this a sustainable or repeatable process? And I looked at, as I say, back at what I went through and thought that checklist might be helpful. And I'm hoping that as we go forward, you find it helpful, and as you gain experience and see more stuff, that maybe you can improve that if it's useful. If it's not useful, then pitch it.
No, it was very good, and I do appreciate it, Bill.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Could we add something about dashboard or website to next month's meeting? Like these 5 characteristics that come from the mission statement. I just like you guys to really take a look at that and, tell us what you think, okay? And one of the options is, Hayes, you're full of nuts. So that's an acceptable option. The fact you just got this award kind of would tend to say that. So don't be bashful.
April 27th, the last Tuesday in the month. Angelico's, yeah, it's really hard for them. So I'm wondering if the board would entertain the first Tuesday in May. And I think if we did the first Tuesday in May and then we did early June to talk about the rates, if we really need a May, if we'd be okay. But love to hear what the board thinks of that.
Steve, does that work for you?
That does work for me. I'll be on vacation as well that week, so that would be preferable.
Okay, I have no conflict identified, so that would work for me.
Okay.
I know, Dave, you proposed last month about possibly trying to get on a routine of the 4th Tuesday of every month, but we always have to be flexible, of course, with the reality of all of our schedules. So that's fine. So May 4th, Tuesday at 8:30 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any further new business, old business discussion? Hearing none. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I would like to I make a motion to adjourn the meeting of March 23rd, 2021.
Thank you, Steve. This is Bill Hayes. I second the motion. Assuming no discussion, let's move to a roll call vote. Steve Horn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill Hayes, how do you vote? Yes. Motion to adjourn passes unanimously. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Great meeting. Congratulations for several things today. Great.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Congrats, Jason. Bye, Angelica.
Yeah. Dave, did you want to stay on 1 minute and we'll talk?
Sure.